Yes, we are
You're
yours
gonna
too.
have to-
We are streaming to YouTube, ready when you are.
I'll call this work session of the Seward City Council to order. It is Monday, November 25th. It's 5:30. And the purpose of this is to have a discussion with the Seward Chamber of Commerce. And I'm going to turn it over to administration to kick this off.
Thank you, administration. I'm going to turn it over to the chamber.
Okay,
Hi,
there
everybody.
you have it.
Thank you so much for meeting with us tonight. Thank you so much to some of the board of directors for being with us here. I've prepared a laydown for you, which you have in front of you. So I'd like to get started with that just by saying thank you for taking the time to meet with us and the thoughtful effort you've put into the budget setting process. We are similarly in a similar position where we are also working on our budget. And as you can guess, that the partnership with the city of Seward hinges a lot on how we can move forward. So for tonight's meeting, I provided a laydown, which includes key points for consideration, which I'll run through quickly, a couple of graphics from the fiscal year 23, and as requested, 2019 through 24 actuals, and of course, the marketing contract for the fiscal years of 23 and 24. So I'll just begin by walking through the key points we'd like to consider tonight. We understand that the city of Seward faces many important priorities across department and the importance of financial discipline to ensure a healthy and prosperous Seward for everyone who lives here. And the city of Seward and the chamber have been partners in working towards prosperity and health for the community of Seward for decades, and this partnership has been instrumental in supporting economic development in our community by promoting year-round visitation and providing visitor information services for those guests who help bolster our economy. Beyond this, the Chamber serves as a valuable hometown resource for community information, events, and support, and so much more, but we must be candid that the cost to deliver our services in our contract significantly exceeds the current funding allotment. And we recognize and appreciate the city's support, including but not limited to the leases for the Visitor Center and the Salmon Derby booth, which are critical to our operations, and of course the marketing contract funding, the efforts from city departments to ensure safe and effective events like the Mount Marathon Race, 4th of July, Salmon Derby, the joint funding for the Alaska SBDC Visitor Center, Alaska SBDC office, I should say, and the years of collaboration, many before me and I hope many after me. And although these contributions are valuable, our funding situation at the Chamber has become untenable. For a little bit of backstory, in 2022 we received 2% of the bed taxes, which was $108,000, and that was representative of the COVID-19 year. And also in 2022 and 2021, understandably, that these were challenging fundraising years. And not only was the Mount Marathon Race and the 4th of July event canceled that year, which is a huge funding opportunity for us, it was also postponed the next year, so we saw historically low funding on those years, reduced participation in the Salmon Derby across those years, and understandably low return on membership and sponsorship opportunities for our office. So following these financial hardships over 2 years, the city voted to cap our funding from 2% of the bed tax to $300,000, a flat funding rate. And while we do appreciate the support, it has not kept pace with the rising cost of delivering services and keeping employees. In 2023 and 2022, over those years, we operated at a deficit, a very large deficit, which depleted our safety net. And despite those challenges, we remained committed to serving the community, and no services were eliminated, and we operated as usual. And here I come, tasked with an attempt to balance the budget, and this year I've had to implement major cuts and operate without a full staff and rely heavily on volunteer support and eliminate professional development opportunities for myself as a young executive director and for my staff, and personally take on the responsibility of 2 to 3 employees. And while these measures have allowed us to scrape by, it's not sustainable. So without a restoration of our funding, without more support, we'll have to make deeper cuts. And this could include eliminating our support for the Alaska Small Business Development Center and cutting year-round positions that help drive cherished community events, scaling back our year-round operations, impacting local jobs, local families, and our community support. And these cuts would, these losses would profoundly affect the community that we serve. We remain committed to a partnership that works in tandem with the city to promote Seward as a year-round destination, place to live, and support the industries that drive our local economy. And tonight, we hope to reaffirm our long-standing partnership with the city of Seward and advocate for a restoration of our funding back to the 2% of the bed tax. And then that's the narrative, and I just would quickly like to point your attention to these 3 graphics that I've included that can just tell another story of our funding and our expenses and how they're used. So the first one, titled Visit Seward Funding, you can see a look at where our large sources of income come from. And 45% of that comes from the City of Seward contract, 45% of that comes from our events, and a small percentage of it comes from our advertising sales. Thanks, Chris, for getting that up on the big screen behind you. That is an easier look at it. And so then that's a look at where we're getting our funding from, and then you turn the page and we can take a look at our city contract expenses. And we broke it down into 3 buckets, and we're seeing about 34% of that monies go out to staff and office, 11% goes to economic development, and 55% goes to year-round marketing efforts. And there's just some outlining of where those dollars actually go. And then finally, if we turn the page one more time, we can take a look at the income and expense based on 23 actuals, and it paints a very clear picture of that we're not breaking even. We're in the red year over year for the last few years, and I hope this paints a compelling enough story to why we're asking for a restoration of our funding. And that's how I'd like to begin, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I was just hoping for the audience and the people watching at home may not realize how in the past where you received 2% of the bed tax, but it was from the previous year, so you were always, if you could explain that for folks that didn't realize why, for example, 2020 was the bad year, but yet 2021 was your harder year because you...
Yeah, I think you explained it well. It's the year past that we received funding for, so.
2 years.
2 years delay.
2 years past.
2020 into 2022.
So I think it's important to note that that's the way it was prior, right? Okay. So not 1 year, it's 2 years past.
Councilmember Varner.
Thank you, Mayor McClure. I have a question, and I don't know if you guys have thought about this, but if you were unable to increase your budget, would there be any programs that you guys currently offer that would have to be cut, or which programs could potentially be at a loss?
I hate to say it, but the most glaring one is the Alaska SBDC Center is a large expense to our operating budget. $25,000 go towards funding that position, and an in-kind of the office space go towards that position as well. So that's a large one, and I sort of outlined them in terms of year-round positions. We would have to contract part-time events coordinator, which is what I had to do to limp through the end of this year, have a part-time events coordinator who had a full-time job somewhere else to get through the end of the year. So those are 2 big ones, and then year-round operations as well.
If you're unable to have a full-time events coordinator, what does that look like for the programming that is currently taking place under the chamber?
Doesn't look good for them. Of course, we want to see it continue, and our efforts would be towards executing those events. But a part-time events coordinator wouldn't have the ability to build those sponsorship opportunities. I think the overall quality of the events would go down because it would be split between your executive director and 1 or 2 other staff members. Really, it's important to have one person who's dedicated to executing all the major events we do throughout the year.
Thank you.
Councilmember.
I've got a couple questions.
Yeah, can I speak to that really quickly?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm the treasurer of the chamber. things are kind of broken up into two buckets, right? There's the large scale events that generate revenue, and those operate at break even or slightly above. They come really close to break even when you start putting in salaries. The things that would have to get cut first are like shop small, winter weekends, like the small scale events that the chamber without a full-time events director has a lot of trouble having the bandwidth to operate. And so those year-round events are the first ones that are gonna have to start getting cut out. The big ones, those operate, like as long as they're generating revenue, we can go inside those little stuff that we try to cover throughout the rest of the year, bring people down on weekends and the winters and those kinds of things. Those are gonna be some of the first that will have to go, because there won't be an events director full-time to run them.
Okay. Go ahead.
You were saying the first thing you'd have to cut is a small business classes there that individual puts on. Why not simply with Major Marine, Kenai Short Tours, Seward Hospitality, and everybody else that's helping promote Seward? Why don't you simply cut your print web advertising and your trade shows travels instead of threatening to take away the small business classes?
Right now, we rely on our staff at the chamber to execute those economic development opportunities and those marketing opportunities. The Small Business Development Center is an outside entity that we share the cost with the city of Seward to provide services to anyone at any level of business, despite being a chamber member or not, to come in and get free consultation. And our office is the only office that operates on this joint funding where the chamber fronts half of the costs for this employee to be in our office.
But what I'm saying, instead of threatening to cut that one out, why don't you simply, with all the other businesses that are advertising, Kenai Fjord Tours, Major Marines, Seward Hospitality, and all the little bit, there's so much advertising going on. Why not simply reduce your print and web advertising in half and your trade show travel, instead of threatening to take the job away? We have so much the big complaint I hear is we have so much advertising out there from the chamber, it's saturating. And I don't want to get into what people are saying about it, but does you have an IT guy that keeps your computer updated for all the businesses that are on there?
Her name is Allie and Malia. Their names are Allie and Malia.
Okay, so how many businesses are represented by the chamber?
We have 348 member businesses within our
Okay.
organization.
And there's 682 business licenses in Seward right now.
Can I?
Let me finish this, okay? Every one of these business represents bed tax, whether it's a charter boat, a bar, a B&B, whatever. They all put money into our taxes, yet they're not being represented by the Seward Chamber of Commerce. And they've been asking me about, how do we get the chamber, the business? I should be able to pull up on the chamber and say, charter boats, and see every charter business, and then you promote your membership off of that. I looked last night, I believe there's 10 or 12 churches in town, and there's only 4 on the Chamber of Commerce website. There's 3 bars out of town, but you only list 2.
I can answer that
So,
question.
yeah, hold the rest and see what they say, okay?
So the Chamber of Commerce is, and I know you guys have heard this before, it's 2 different entities, right? It's the Chamber of Commerce, which is a membership organization. Our members pay to be listed on the website. They pay to be in that print advertising. They pay for those benefits that they get as a chamber. We're also a visitor center, an economic development partner, a community support, whatever you want to call it these days, DMO, whatever. But that's where every business in town benefits. So maybe that business isn't listed on our website because they're not paying for that. But if somebody comes into the Chamber of Commerce and they need a service from any business in town, the staff in there is going to direct them to the business that can best give them that service, whether they're a chamber member or not, right? That's the economic development part that we are contracted with the city to supply. So our members pay to have their names in that print advertisement. They pay to have their names put out there and go into these, these trade shows and whatnot. And then the city partners with the Chamber of Commerce to to manage the visitors that as they come into Seward and direct them to the resources that they need while they're here, whether or not it's a business that's part of the chamber, that's a member, that's paying that $200 plus a year that they pay to become a basic member, and then there's all sorts of different levels that they can pay for those additional services. So we are doing what you're saying, but to not list, every business that's listed on the chamber website is there because they're paying a fee to be there.
But these same businesses are paying the taxes to the city that's going to you guys, which they should get representation from. Whether it's just the name and contact number, and then you can advertise, I mean, like you guys say here, there was 25,000 visitors, and your small effective team excited to continue setting trends in Alaska. Why not set a trend where every business license in a town is represented? Because I've ran into people fishing or at church, and they didn't know things because they couldn't find it on the chamber's website. They could Google it.
Okay, there's a hand back there.
I'm a chamber member, and I own a business in town, and if everybody gets their stuff put out there for free, why would I pay my dues? Nobody will pay their dues anymore if it's not gonna be out there for free. And we are a membership-based organization, so, and I pay for things getting, my name getting out there, my pictures in the visitor guide, them directing them to my place of business when people come in, answering questions so that my staff isn't stuff, telling everybody what to do, where to go, where to stay, all those types of things. The chamber takes care of a lot of that stuff so that my staff can take care of my business, not be in the business of telling people what to do in Seward.
Okay, so let me
Okay, real quick, and then.
help on that. Let's go back to, it's the phone book philosophy. Every one of us, our phone number was put in a phone book, unless we paid to have it unsubscribed. But you could pay to get a whole page, quarter sheet, or whatever. But every business in this town should be represented by the Seward Chamber of Commerce. And what I mean is, the name is on there. The first ones that should come up in, let's say, charter boats, is the ones that are memberships. And then as they go down, they can find just the basic information. But there's a lot of people that would like to be represented wholly.
Okay, Kevin, hold on a second.
Okay.
Vice Mayor, you have a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So these numbers, these actuals, and all these years past that you've got listed in our handout, where is it separated, since it was brought up that you are a two-entity organization? You take care of the city and you take care of visitors and development, or visitors and, I forgot what was said now. But is this is all just together?
This is indicative of the marketing dollars.
But this is, so you don't separate out the two different, when you're telling us that you have member-paid benefits, right? I would assume that there are expenses that come along with that.
There are, and they're
So-
not represented in this in front of you. This is services within,
So the membership-driven monies is not accounted for in here?
no, that's another book. We are not presenting our chamber dollars. We are presenting the dollars that are provided by the city of Seward to execute the events to execute the services that are outlined in the contract.
In the budget to actuals, just to,
The 2019.
yeah, this is, it says member-based revenues at the top line.
Oh.
So I think that's everything together.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I thought we were
Difficult because
looking at
there's
this.
a lot of overlap, saying 30% of this salary goes into this bucket, 30% of this, or 30% of the operating costs of the office go into this bucket.
Okay.
It's really difficult to separate. If you are to generalize the buckets, the chamber bucket itself tends to operate at a loss because it's trying to provide a community service and gets its funding from advertising sales. But the workload of the salaries dropped into that bucket, kind of put it into a loss. The other bucket of the big events, they break even or just make a little bit, and then the economic development / visitor services side generates very little revenue going outside of the city finances.
Follow up?
So just to point out some things so I'm sorry, I did miss the membership-based revenue on the top of this list. I apologize for that. But I will say in 2019 actuals, you have $263,000 for City of Seward marketing. I'm assuming that's the money that you got from the City of Seward. And then on top of that, you have member-based revenue, $161,182 in 2019. You get to 2022 actuals, you have $108,717 coming from the city, and then $91,805 coming from your membership-based revenue. Your 2023 actuals are a little bit lower, $80,679, but you've got $300,000 coming from the city of Seward. So it's like the city of Seward has been giving more and more and more. I'm assuming, I hope our membership hasn't dropped that much so that our member-based revenue has gone down. I mean, that's what it shows me on this spreadsheet, that it's gone down from 161,000 in 2019 to 62,000 right now through October in 2024. Is there a reason why that kind of dropped?
I think a lot of people had to recover from the COVID-19 year, and the cost of doing business is not cheap. We also operated at a deficit for 2 years, and membership fell off over the course of COVID-19. Membership tracking, membership invoicing, we didn't have employees to do those services. So that's part of the reason that was like that. And I will also say that I was not the executive director during that time, so I can't really speak to everything that went on with the books during that time. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of a caveat there.
Councilmember Barnwell, you had your hand up a while back. Remember what you were going to ask?
Yeah, that was a good comment. I mean, that's kind of interesting, and I'm just curious. I think you said somewhere around 350 members. So you're charging about $200 for membership?
That's one level of membership, yeah. But if I could steer the conversation away from the membership side of what we're doing here, we're discussing the marketing contract with the city of Seward and the chamber.
But did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. That was one of them. Okay. Two, when you're talking about the marketing contract, how long have we had this contract relationship with the chamber?
Decades.
1996.
And are there other chambers in the state that have similar marketing? Because I hear a lot that many chambers in the state, or most, are funded purely through membership and then raising money through the activities.
So
we're very different as a community, and I think maybe if you could just explain and rationalize that a little bit for us, it might help put this in context.
Sure. So the city of Seward contracts the chamber to provide services in the destination marketing organization realm. So what that means is visitor information services, a visitor center, a website that talks about your place as a destination, services that surround visitation. So you fund us to be this destination marketing organization. Our office is also a traditional chamber of commerce that has a membership that pays dues to get services in that membership. So the Seward Chamber of Commerce took on this effort to become the destination marketing organization for the city. Many places are separate entities. Many places have a chamber and they also have a DMO. In Seward, we're a small town, it makes sense to put them together here, and that's the way it is in other places on the peninsula, in Alaska, but if you look at Anchorage, they have an Anchorage Chamber of Commerce that serves as a traditional chamber, and they have an Anchorage, they have Visit Anchorage, which makes their money off of bed tax and advertisement dollars. If you look at the Mat-Su CVB, the Convention Bureau, they have about a $900,000 operating budget that's given by their borough, district, city.
Which one was that?
Mat-Su.
Mat-Su. That's what I took.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
More. So, sorry. I think there's two problems here that I see. And that, by the way, helped clarify for me. That really helped a lot. So that a lot of communities don't run through the chamber for their advertising or marketing programs. Where I go wrong right now with the chamber, and this is going forward, we're changing as a community. One problem I have with the chamber is the fact that people in the city are basically paying a tax. And I agree that a lot of people out of town pay taxes in this town. But we also we're funding at a greater weight here in the city for marketing our businesses. So for instance, if I owned a B&B, I'm paying a little more tax than someone out of town that has a B&B may not even be a member of your organization and gets the benefits of the marketing that we, the city, are funding. And I have a little bit of a problem with that, and that goes back to what we were talking about bed tax last meeting. You know, it's not very fair that we would pay 15, or people would pay 15 in town here, and then out of town would pay 3. Have you had that conversation, or have you ever tried to reconcile with that?
So much of my efforts and conversation with people around a similar topic go back to that education piece of the two functions that we serve, both as a chamber and as a membership organization. So the City of Seward is contracting us to provide destination marketing services for the City of Seward, and then member-based businesses in the community can opt in to additional promotional services. So the city is not contracting us to promote individual businesses. Membership exists to opt in to be able to do that. The city funds us to promote Seward as a destination, to provide visitor center services, to be a year-round visitor center with doors open, lights on year-round, for people to come in who are visiting town, and to support economic development efforts.
Okay, so last question, sorry. But, so the other problem I have, and this is a little touchy, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Sam. I'm just trying to dig down a little bit because, you know, we represent different factions or different groups of people. So for instance, the last meeting we had with the bed tax proposal, we heard from the business community, particularly the hoteliers and the B&B people, the strong reaction to that, right? So what we're hearing is that, I hear anyways, we all probably hear different things, but there are some issues, I think, going forward, particularly with bottom class cruise ships coming in the future. We have to plan for that. At some point, we probably have to sit down with you and go, what really is your mission? If it's just visitors and drawing more and more visitors, and I know that's probably has been your main one for the last decade, and maybe that's shifting more and more.
I would say it's destination management, so engaging and interacting with the visitors that come to town as they do, so that there's a point source based off of the contract that's in there. That's kind of how it's transitioned.
But a lot of the literature that you guys publish draw tourists. Would you agree with that? That's one of your main missions.
There's a hometown guide to attract visitors to attract people to come and live here. There's efforts to become a destination to live. And then there's also the marine industry guide. So there are efforts outside of just solely visitation, but that is a piece of the contract that we have been instructed to execute by.
Yeah, I guess where I'm going with this is and maybe we have to go dig down further in another meeting, but eventually I think we need to discuss really what is the mission statement. How do we want to, for instance, I personally would like to have more winter businesses and less summer visitors. I know Hillary probably doesn't agree with that because she runs that. But you know, we all have different perspectives. Definitely too, right?
That ship has sailed. They are coming.
I know.
And so,
I know. So why are we marketing?
Yeah, why are we marketing?
It's managing.
We're marketing year round, and we're managing.
So it's managing versus marketing here.
Right. And you talk about bringing people in the winter, and as Stephanie pointed out earlier, some of the things that we would have to cut right off the bat would be those winter things that bring people into town and do the shopping at the businesses that do stay open, which there aren't a lot, but there are businesses that stay open, and putting on the events that we put on, such as, you know, the Halloween week they had coming up, and then there's, what's the next winter weekend that's coming up, Sam?
Shop Small this weekend.
Shop Small Saturday, I mean, that's huge. When I had a business in town that didn't succeed, but when I had it, Shop Small was great for me, and that was promoted by the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
We'd like to see more winter visitation efforts to put out by our office, and right now, if you look at the scope of the industry in terms of visitation in Alaska, Fairbanks has the corner on the market. They're putting most of their dollars into winter visitation, and they're full. And we'd like to stay on that curve with them and get people down here into our ice-free port, get them on the bay, get them in the national park. But a lot of that hinges on what we're doing with our dollars.
All right, I'll just have one more comment.
Okay, one more,
Sorry.
and then I'll give you
We could
a-
talk all day, but
Okay.
the mindset's a little different. I guess what you're not hearing is that I don't want just visitors. I want another welding shop or a boat building business or you know what I mean? And I don't know if that's the domain of the chamber, but I'm just saying that we keep thinking visitors and that's our only mindset. And I would like to try to get diversity in the winter. And I know you guys are trying to do that. I don't know how much weight you're putting into that, and I don't know your strategies, but I'm just saying that that's where I hear a lot of people saying that our focus should be boat.
Okay, I'm gonna, did you have a question?
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
I'll get Cassie in there.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. But I think we're in a unique position because the contract is up for renewal. So I think that we can really have that conversation about what we want to have in that contract to direct some of their services into this year round, if that, or this winter marketing, if that's what we want as a council and as a community. There was a planning and zoning session on housing, not this last one, but the one they had before. And there was an individual from the community that had stated they were having a hard time hiring because of housing. They found somebody in Homer, but they weren't sure they wanted to come here because they knew housing was hard. I feel like that's a way that we can really tap into the chamber to have them be changing that narrative across the state to help bring people in, if that's something that we're interested in doing. And when it comes back down to the financial piece, which is also part of this conversation, I wonder if maybe instead of doing another, reinstating the 2% bed tax, maybe there's an initiative where we give a percentage of our quarter 4 and quarter 1, which are our winter months, to incentivize a little bit more in the winter.
Councilmember.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's one of the reasons we stuck to the 300,000, because you see what happened in COVID, another pandemic. It hurts. That's why we set the 300,000 limit, not a percentage. Because it shows right here what a percentage did to this chamber. That's why we went with the 300,000. Now, I would like to see more, everybody likes to see more winter advertising and less visitor advertising, because we have so many other people advertising Visit Seward in the summer. I mean, KFT, Seward Hospitality, Major Marines, they're all focusing on bringing the visitors in. Why aren't we taking that focus into the winter from the chamber instead of the summer? And one last thing, you know, I mean, there's about a 70% decrease in your membership from 2019 to now. Have you tried to send a survey to the businesses to see why?
Do you have a response to that?
Yeah, so I want to clarify something about these actuals. 2019 was translated from an Excel spreadsheet into QuickBooks, okay? So Cindy Clark, not throwing her under the bus, but her unique form of accounting, okay? And so we don't know exactly if everything's in an appropriate bucket. 2020 with Jason walked into a very unique situation with the chamber and COVID hitting at the same time. Brought in a lot of grant funding, expended a lot of grant funding, and this guy has a comment right after me. And 2021 was overflow from that and a little bit of recovery, but a lot of money still going out, trying to recover. And then 2022 is when things started to even out. So looking at 2020, 2021, and 2022 is kind of a very skewed picture. If you looked at my books for my business, it would be a very skewed picture because everything was just thrown off by the pandemic. So the only actual content that we can count on as being completely accurate and not influenced by an outside event is 2023. 2024 is still building. So to kind of pick apart previous years, considering what we were facing and what accounting we were coming out of, is a bit of a skewed picture. So if you look at the membership-based revenue in 2019, we can't be exactly certain that that was all membership dues. Those might have been other buckets that were combined. If you were to look at the numbers of members over the years, it's been between 350 and 400 the entire time. And so Sam's actually done a good job building it back up. The numbers don't reflect the actuals for some of these things. So the books have just becoming stable in the last year or two. It's been all over the place for the last few years.
And I can speak that too. I came in November, and also that was the time too where we actually, in early 2020, we switched to like a bookkeeper, and we made a major transition into that. And so And it was a big system transition, and so I can't speak to that either, but I know that we had good accounting that I can speak to in 20, Kat and I were earlier going over the timeline of I was there in November of 2019 and November of 21. And so, but yeah, it was really chaotic, and we saw 2022 coming. And so we were also trying to keep money back where we can, and because we knew it was coming and it was going to hurt. And so there was a lot of we did not have a lot of staffing in the visitor center, and we were all taking rotations, and I was up in the visitor center all the time. And that was we were putting away money for that. So it is a hard thing to try and place numbers around. And so I would say, just to speak to that with Stephanie.
Okay, Vice Mayor Osenga.
Say something.
Oh,
If I can clarify, it just matters where we account for the money. If it's member-based revenue, or if we're designating it as Mount Marathon income, what they're calling Mount Marathon income oftentimes is advertising generated from Mount Marathon and so forth for the Marathon Guide. And so different chamber directors put different income in different categories. But if you add up the totals from all of the member-based sources, that number has actually gone up, not down. And so it's not as though we've dropped from 160 to 80,000. It's that we've recategorized from what Cindy used to put on her Excel spreadsheet. Oh, one of my members paid this, to now we're saying, well, this was actually their membership, this was what they paid to advertising on Marathon, So when Major kicks in money for the fireworks, which bucket does that get put in? If you look at the actual total income and subtract what the city gave us, all the rest of it came from the members, with very few exceptions for things like the race entry fees and things like that. So
thank you.
that whole narrative is a little bit off there.
That actually makes it look pretty good. Okay, so Vice Mayor Osenga.
No problem.
Well, he kind of answered part of the question. I was going to start with 2023. You had 80,679 for member-based revenue, but you're saying now that some of that can be accounted for in other sections of the spreadsheet, right? So I do think that member-based revenue is kind of important to this, because I'm wondering the 300,000 that the City of Seward marketing, how much of that carries over to other businesses in town? So how much information about the businesses in Seward is included under the City of Seward marketing? I mean, it's just so much more to promote one entity versus 350. So I'm trying to see what the difference is, and if any of that bled over into the city. And I know you can't probably come up with that right now, but it was just a question that I had, really.
Well, again, we sort of mentioned a rising tide lifts all boats, and the marketing dollars go towards marketing the destination of Seward. And then members can opt in to get their specific business listing on resources like Seward.com or the Visitor's Guide. So that's where that gray area happens and that bleed through happens.
So there is a so that part of that 300,000 that you're using to promote the City of Seward, putting out something for the City of Seward, basically promoting it, winter-wise or otherwise. So there is a benefit to the people that are members, basically.
There's a benefit to everybody in Seward.
Well, sure.
And then you
Right.
can opt into additional promotion through the membership service.
And pay for destination guide advertising and that type of stuff.
Right, I mean, yeah,
May I ask a question real quick?
sure.
On the page income versus expense, is that the FY23 actuals versus expense for the chamber as a whole? For this page with the bars, is that the actual versus expense for the Chamber of Commerce as a whole?
Not including membership
Okay.
dues. And just to clarify membership dues, because you're
What's
looking at
that?
a bucket category,
Yep.
and I have the full spreadsheet. The membership dues have fluctuated between $73,000 and $68,000 for the last 6 years.
So from,
Membership dues, it is different buckets that you're looking at. So the events, the large-scale events account for about $300,000, a little more than $300,000. The other monies that come from the city account for the small events, the economic development, some of the salaries, portions of the salaries, and so all the other things, right? And so the big events pay for themselves, little events don't generate any money except for the businesses in the community, no revenue to the Chamber of Commerce. The membership dues pay for the ads in the membership guides and additional ad resources that we've given out to them. The city's paying for pretty much everything else that's happening in this entity under the contract.
So from an administrative standpoint, just kind of seeing what the conversation that we're talking about is going right now, it seems that we may want to have a larger conversation about marketing goals and what this destination marketing organization breakdown looks like, but also recognizing that we're on the crunch for time with the budget and setting that forth. That being said, budgets are a fluid document. I feel from the conversation that we've had, a lot of people here find a lot of value in the SBDC position, and recognizing that we are the only entity that splits that. Usually it's split between the city and the SBDC as well. I'm confident we can find a way to amend that so that we take on the $50,000 cost of that, thus removing it from the Chamber of Commerce's line item, which would then make it a $300,000 without paying into the shared value as well. And then when we come to 2025 with some time without the weight of the budget on us, we can revisit this, have a conversation, maybe involve community members as well to see what the future of tourism and destination management and marketing looks like in our community, and find a solution that probably incorporates a CPI as well into this conversation, since we always see a cost of inflation and things along those lines. So that right out from the gate, we can get this to a balanced number with some wiggle room so that it's not such a big weight, but then have the intent and the initiative to move forward and find that solution that works for all aspects of our community, inside city limits, outside the city limits, businesses, year-round, XYZ. So that is the recommendation from the administration at this time.
I have a couple questions coming
Yeah.
over. No? Councilmember Wells has been waiting.
Is it my turn?
Very long time. Yes, finally, speak.
First, I want to thank every single one of the chamber board members and employees, because I know as a business owner and an entrepreneur since I was 19, in multiple cities, in multiple states, I know how important the chamber is. And I know why, and I appreciate the fact that the chamber represents those businesses that are willing to invest in their local chamber, opposed to just every single business that has a business license. I put in marketing dollars, as you know, not only with our local chamber, but with chambers not only in this state, but in other states, whether I have a business there or not. I may want a business there one day. And so as a business owner, thank you all so much, because I do know the value that the chamber brings, and I see it in my bottom line every year, especially right now as I'm budgeting my forecasting for my businesses, and I'm very appreciative of that. But that was my statement.
Oh, now we have time.
We sure do. I think that I just want to clarify one thing. So our local Seward Chamber operates not only the chamber, but also the Seward Visitor Center. And my question is how many chambers also operate a visitor center? Is that a common practice? Because I don't believe that it is, but I don't know.
It is split. We're a small town, so it makes sense that it got lumped together, but typically there is a visitor center, and there's a destination marketing organization, and there's a separate entity that is a chamber of commerce. So we are in a very unique position with goals that mostly align, but sometimes they don't.
It's common on the
Short
Kenai
follow,
Peninsula, and I
if
always
I may.
wonder if like the Kenai Peninsula all got together and said, hey, we're gonna do it this way.
Yeah.
And it's very common in like the 4 or 5 towns on the Kenai.
Okay,
So my follow-up is
I'll get you.
so that people understand, first of all, the city of Seward does not gift $300,000 to the chamber. It is a marketing and representation agreement. How much, if in any way, shape, or form, whether you can do it today or some other day, what would the cost be if the city of Seward had to operate our own visitor center and staff our own visitor center in comparison to team co-working with the chamber?
I don't have that number on the
I didn't expect you to, well, the reason why I ask is because I think it's important for all of us that are sitting up here and every member within the community to realize that if we weren't partnering with our local chamber and we said, okay, we're just gonna keep this 300K, now we're gonna go pay for our own visitor center, we're gonna go pay for, and we're gonna go do all this. I think it's important for us to be able to compare apples to apples, that's all.
I can give you a rough idea.
Rough it up.
If you just wanted to run the events alone, $325,000. Okay, just Mount Marathon, 4th of July, and the Derby. If you wanted to run all the other events, you're looking at between $700,000 and $800,000 at the current expense level with the current level of quality of staff.
Thank you.
And I will just jump in there and say, that's not
That's not
considering things like what you're gonna pay an employee to do, plus the cost of the benefits, plus the payroll taxes, plus everything else that it costs you as a business to have an employee. As a contracted company, you're not paying for that. And the chamber doesn't have health benefits. Our employees do not have those health benefits that a city employee would have if the city was doing it. So that's an additional cost that we just can't even think about incurring at this point in time, which we would love to. I'd love to be able to, as the chamber president, say, Sam, I get to offer you health benefits this year.
You
know,
do?
but I can't do that. And the board, we cannot do that, unfortunately. It would be great if we could. So there's additional costs other than just what does it cost to run these events? Or what does it cost to staff somebody down at the cruise ship terminal to direct those cruise ship passengers where to go and where the bathrooms are and where's the grocery store, where's the post office, where's the, the gas station, where do I go buy tackle? Again, whether or not those businesses are listed in our chamber guide, if they are asking for the service, they are directed there. Where do I go get lumber? There's only one place in town where you can buy a 2x4 right now.
Where?
Not so fast. She's the only one with 2x4.
You have to stop by the chamber. Stop by the chamber office, they'll tell you.
Councilmember Barnwell.
I just want to remind people also that the city has benefit, we have $8 million in sales tax this past year, somewhere in that range, so we are talking about a lot of money that you guys the chambers help generate. The other thing I wanted to point out is, like, if I look at the net for 4th of July or the net for Mount Marathon, it's not a lot of money. You're not making a lot of money, but it's interesting. It would be interesting to try to break down how much 4th of July or Mount Marathon makes for the city. I don't know how to quantify that, but I think that there's a lot of money injected into this town during
The
that
line
event.
note in there too is it says does not include salaries in these expenses.
Yeah.
So it's not counting any payroll costs, it's just straight across the board.
Just look at the peak in sales taxes you get on the 4th of July. I mean, every one of those people are here, every one of those vendor booths are collecting sales tax for the city.
So the last thing I wanted to point out, or say to Kat, one, I think that's actually not a bad idea. I'm not saying to Kat, but I'm just saying to add to Kat, is that I've always thought you guys spend about $30,000 on smolt per year.
It fluctuates.
Yeah.
We try.
17,500 this
There
year.
was none to buy this year.
Yeah. So I know during the pandemic, for instance, we ordered about half the smolt that year because you guys didn't make enough money.
We changed the methodology to buy the same amount of smolt as the buyback generated, so that the programming that was funding the smolt purchases was therefore paying for the smolt purchases.
So
If I remember that correctly. I may have
So
wiped
basically,
it
you
all
buy
out.
as many smolt as you can afford, based on that buyback program?
Yep, previously it was a X amount each time, which was kind of
We stopped being
digging the
able to
hole,
afford
that's not being able to
Okay,
afford that.
so here's
But
my
they haven't had
point.
smolt all the time. Did you just say you didn't have smolt? You couldn't buy any this
Couldn't
year?
buy smolt this year, they didn't have any.
We haven't
Yep.
done the PR yet.
Well, Jason and I were
Okay.
talking about, they were doing beef seine this year, Lagoon, probably, they're trying to get the fruit stock. But, the point I guess I'm making is, like, if I'm a boater, and I'll be out there, mid-June, and there's 0 boats out in Ialik, or, even out on the Cape, but July 1st comes along, or right around there when the silver's hit, and $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 boats from Anchorage are showing up like bumblebees everywhere. Those silvers generate a lot for the city. It's not just the silver salmon derby. It's really July. It's July, August, September. It's 3 months, and it's drawn a lot of money in. So I wouldn't be completely opposed to working with you guys. I wouldn't mind making sure we get the smolt, because this year was a dismal year, and I know it's not just a smolt program that probably created that, but it certainly can't hurt to make sure we have smolt every year. So that's another area that we could throw out there. Yeah.
Councilmember.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Councilmember Barwell. I talked to a lot of charter boats, and our last 2 years of silvers have been a fight.
Yeah.
The last 2 summers, when 2 of the biggest charters were worried about having to go all the way to Granite Island to find silvers, because they're not coming in. And we need to, and if you didn't buy any this year, that derby's gonna be real bad in 3 years. But if you monitor the outdoor forums, that's being talked about a lot, about how the silver run has changed in Seward from real good to getting real bad.
Can I clarify that we wanted to buy smolt this year? We could
I'm
not.
sure you did, I'm sure you did.
Yeah, they have, it was not
Claimed
there.
on in
Yeah.
3-4 years
Yeah.
on the chamber, we
Yeah.
tried.
That's happened before.
And there's
Yeah.
a lot of environmental outside
yes.
factors that
Commercial
contribute to
fishing,
this
all
that
that
is a
affects
lot
it.
bigger than
Also,
the
fishing
small
game dumps
contract
a lot of
with
fish in the
CIA.
system.
How many?
A few million.
But the more staff
Small.
time and the
Not
more
small.
resources we can put into the Salmon Derby, the better it's gonna be to get people here. The more advertising we can put into the Salmon Derby, the better it's gonna be for all the boats that are out there fishing. And that's what we wanna do. We wanna continue to provide these services to the community, that we always have, and we need to do it at a sustainable level. And we have not been able to operate that way, so. I think you make a good point, Councilmember Barnwell, about looking at what our priorities are as a city for what kind of destination we want to represent. What do you want your DMO to be? What message you want sent? What efforts do you want done when that visitation happens? But in my last presentation, I think I made a point that I want to reiterate tonight, is that having that ambassador in the industry level is really important for the city to have representation to, when there are so many outside stakeholders that are invested in Seward and invested in Alaska as a destination. You can rely on our office to be that conduit of information between the local level, the policy level, and the industry. And I would love to get on the same page as to the message we want to advocate between the city, our office, our members, the businesses, the community, finding that common ground. I think there is one. Visitation is, we don't want it to go away. We want it to be done in a healthy and sustainable way for everybody to enjoy. And that's what our office can be as well.
Councilmember Finch.
You said you sent out a survey to businesses before. Could you do another one to get more responses, to see what they might want for that? Because like I say, out of 682, was that about 58% represented by the chambers?
That's a very high percentage for chamber representation, actually. That's a
Yeah, that's a good
representation.
number.
The state of Alaska, their state level only has about 650 businesses represented that I'm aware of for the tourism-based aspect of it anyway. So that we're generally pretty well represented by the businesses. We have a good business membership. And just as a side note, I received today from Johnny Frazier at the the Alaska Sea Life Center conducted a happiness survey. A few weeks ago, it had about 250 representative survey answers, and 72% of the survey responses indicated that the chamber was important or very important to the community of Seward. So we do have a recent survey indicating that the chamber is important to the community by the community members.
Not just chamber.
Not just chamber members, community members.
All right, anything else? Do we want to discuss the suggestion from the city manager of, you want to repeat your suggestion, please?
I said it so good the first time. Can't you just remember? So my recommendation, or the recommendation of administration right now, would be to amend this upcoming budget to increase our allocation for the Alaska Small Business Development Center from $25,000 to $50,000. That way the Chamber of Commerce can take it out of their budget for the 2025 year, and then we can have a robust conversation around what we want to see in this contract. Because I wrote this contract that is expiring at the end of this year, and I think it was a very similar conversation to last time of saying, oh, what does the city council want to see? What should be allocated under these accounts? So we can have that conversation, potentially coordinate a CPI increase or something along those lines. Administration would like to steer away from doing a direct correlation of percentage, just in case there was a COVID again, where you would have that same, oh, things dropped down, but definitely finding a way to incentivize and engage the management contract. Sorry, that one was not as good as the first one. I'm really, but that would be, our recommendation at this point would be to potentially move forward with the $25,000 and then to schedule a deep dive work session that kind of hints at what exactly that economic development destination management piece looks like.
The deep dive work session would be after first of the year.
People are going to start thinking that I'm a broken record when I say after the first of the year, but we could do it.
Christmas. No, I mean, well, the contract is up, so.
Yeah, so that is the point to discuss. I had one follow-up question too. Currently, the chamber checks are dispersed in 2 periods, like on January 1 and July 1. Is that something that would be beneficial to keep, or would it be better to do it all at once as a contract? Because I'm just something that popped into my head. Quarterly even?
I've talked to my board before I
Okay.
spoke to that.
Yeah, just another thing to put into the thought process there.
That deep dive conversation.
Yeah.
I want to mention that that's appreciated. Sam is going to break even this year, being very fiscally responsible with the books this year, having cut an entire position into a contract position. So even with the $25,000 shift, we will still have to cut programs. We will not be able to operate with anything but a loss. So it's, and I don't mean that in a threatening tone, it's just what it is from the treasurer side, is we will not be able to hire a full-time employee, which is a full-time position for somebody who's living here. We will still have to cut programs. She has only gotten us by, we still have, this year we currently have about $65,000 in revenue this year, and we have about $55,000 in expenses coming up. And so we will not be able to give raises to meet the cost of living. We will not be able to talk about additional benefits, and we will have to talk about cutting some programs. So we are at the minimum we can operate at right now with the current finances. So we're not trying to beg for money. We're trying to say we want to do this job really well, and we can't unless we figure out new ways to generate revenue. And the events that we operate that are big revenue generators, we can bump those up in places. But right now we're talking about the Derby, like how do we make the Derby fun despite the fish, which means less revenue coming in. And Mount Marathon is a race that has a limitation on how many participants can be in it, and there's a limitation on how many spaces we can sell for the 4th of July food space, and those are our 2 big revenue generators. And so we can't raise the race fees a lot. They are going up next year, but there's limitations to that too. So we're operating as efficiently as possible without cutting expense or cutting programs, and we won't be able to do that for very much longer.
What's, just out of curious, like, what's the number? Like, with 300, like, what, do you have this number? Like, what would be the ask?
$300,000, we're breaking even with cutting.
Right, but what, like, what do you?
What would be the difference?
Yeah, what's the difference? Like, what do you, like, what's that mean?
Well, we cut a full-time position to $30,000, so it was a $65,000 position. Sam deserves a raise, and she works very hard. And then we are putting out the hometown guide again. It's on its rotation, right? Hometown, and the Marine guide will be coming up at the end of next year, if I remember right. So those are $15,000, $20,000 expenses each there. A $30,000.
Don't you sell ad space for those though?
We
So they're not self-sufficient?
They come close, but that's the goal, right? The goal is to make them self-sufficient, but they're not always completely self-sufficient. You're asking, for some businesses, that's asking them to pay for 3 ads in 3 different places.
You already know how expensive those ads are.
I know.
I know.
It's an expensive publication.
So, like I said, why not send out a survey to the businesses and see what you can do to get them to join or find out why they haven't done it? I mean, there's still 300-something out there.
I would also, another recommendation potentially to add is so I think from administration standpoint and recognizing that the percentage is probably the goal, but something that we would like to avoid based off of past history of making sure that it stays fluid throughout, is bring back a number that says, here is what we need to operate and grow. You know, recognizing that the bed tax fluctuates, we've seen huge dips, we've seen growth. If there is levels with which the operations are, like that your goal operations would be, what is the marketing contract associated with it, and what is that number outside of all of the other aspects as well? Instead of just saying, oh, 15,000 here, 15,000, let's break that down and showcase it.
It would be, if we, sorry, I'm doing math in my head right now.
Is this something that we can bring back?
Yeah, no, so that's what I'm saying.
Bring it back, like, yeah.
Yeah, and kind of going back to what Randy was saying of like, if we were to put this out to an RFP, we would get back a proposal that says, here's what we're going to offer, here's how much it costs. So instead of speaking in a very, well, some of this covers this, some of this covers that, breaking that down and showcasing, here's what you are paying for, here's how much it costs. If we don't receive X amount, we will not do X.
And so you're asking us to do that based on the contract that we have as it is right now? Right, because that's what we have right now.
Yeah.
Contract.
Well, so I was going to say based off of that, and also based off of, like, not to put more work on the plate, but to say based off of what you have now, and then based off of in an ideal world, you know, if you were to come back with a numerical ask of for X amount of dollars, what is the corresponding thing?
So the goal is to make sure that the contract is what the city wants
Mhm.
to see happen, wants to see
Yep.
what services the city wants to see the chamber.
And then what the
provide.
cost is corresponding to those services.
And what the community, because,
Mhm.
I mean, there's a lot of backward, well, we don't want visitors
Mhm.
coming in, we've got enough visitors, but we
Yeah.
still want you to provide these services. I mean, it's a tug of war, right? And we're trying
Mhm.
to find that balance and to give you a number based on not having a clear
Mhm.
path on what's being asked.
Yeah, exactly. And so when we have these conversations without that clear path, but also without the clear numerical assignment to it, because we can say hypothetically, oh, we'll cut this position or we'll cut this programming, but what does that actually look like when we bring it forward?
We've done that and I can't find it.
But this is something we can bring back
Yeah,
prior to the next budget, because there's one more, right?
Yeah, we have one more budget cycle meeting, one more, there's tonight and then December 16th.
And that's it. We vote
Yeah,
then. Councilman
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
just a thought too. You
I
don't
think
have to.
that what Kat just said is important, because if we listen to some of the other council members and some of the people in the community that maybe aren't business owners, or they are business owners, but I think that there's a lot of folks that don't actually understand what the chamber is, let alone what the chamber in Seward is, and all of the what the chamber the benefits are. And so, like Kat said, if break it out clear as day, then it's much easier to justify the funds, I guess, for the people who don't understand.
Councilmember Barnwell.
I like that, that's a good idea. But my comment, I am very serious about that, but I know that what Melissa's right, it's not easy to do that. And I don't know if you guys can do that in a week or two from now, you know, especially because it's from one comment, you know, but it would be really nice to dive into that.
Yeah.
I really do.
I would say also recommend that Jason, administration would be happy to sit down and do a meeting in between that and walk through that as well, so that we can present a well-rounded document.
That sounds good.
So we can do that.
That would be super helpful,
Yeah.
especially for like your past
Mhm.
experience and now your current experience and where you're at. That'd be very helpful.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking there's.
Okay, anything else? Okay, this brought a lot of topics forward and a lot to think about. Should we, as a council, discuss the recommendation of the 25,000? Do we need to give direction, or can you just put that in there and then we vote on it with the budget? Would you like some feedback?
Would that be with the budget?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
something-
that's part of the budget. Yep, so we have that currently budgeted at 25.
There is the 25 now, and the suggestion from administration was to put an additional 25,000
And then we can.
for that.
Yeah, because it shouldn't be the chamber's responsibility.
And they are providing
pay for
in-kind
that.
services with the space and
Mhm.
technology as well.
So, are there any
No, that's good.
feelings pro or con here? Pro?
Good start.
Seeing some nods?
So what we could do later on at the council meeting is somebody could make that amendment to the
We would have
the
to
budget,
do
and we
that.
can pass that at this next meeting as well, if we wanted to get that solidified
It would be
tonight.
on there then, but we would have to either,
Yep.
And then, sorry,
Yes.
would we amend that on the 16th or final?
You can do it, you can amend it tonight if you'd like during the.
But after we have a meeting, say with Jason.
Oh, yeah.
We can add to that if we clarify what.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
okay?
Great.
Anything else? Any last words?
I hope you have a good council meeting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Admin, are you? any final-
We are good, yeah. Thank you so
Okay.
much, everybody.
I'll close this work session then, and we will resume with the regular meeting at 7 PM.